Alzen, I thought you were there till the very end. What happened to lead to you leaving WCW in 2000?
Oh, Diamond Dallas Page was just a sensitive bitch the whole time he worked because he had the boss's ear and got all kinds of favoritism. And I heeled on him pretty hard, and he didn't like it. And we had a bit of a blow-up backstage, and he tried to apologize in front of a bunch of people, which was just for show.
Right.
So when he stuck his hand out, I threw up my hands like I was being robbed, excuse me. And I wouldn't shake his hand. And, I always thought he got me fired. But I got to be honest, the product was so bad at that point, I was just ready to get out of there. So if you want to blame me for it, that's fine. But I missed the last 4 or 5 weeks, right before WWE bought it. But all the guys I worked with in wrestling, and you won't find too many who have a bad word to say about me. But the perfect nickname for Paige, which I used on the air, was DD Me. Because I never worked with anybody who tried to do everything for himself, who flew so high on borrowed wings. I mean, he made Hulk Hogan seem unselfish, for God's sake. At least Hogan delivered the goods all the time. He was a top draw. But Page, always thought he was overrated then because of his connection with, his superiors. And looking back, I have no reason to think I was wrong.
I told you, Mark, you'll always speak your mind.
Well, and then with this yoga, and God bless him if it works, but, his rehab with Jake and Scott, God bless him for trying. But in Jake's case especially, I don't know how much it worked, and Scott's had a few relapses too. Both those guys are good guys. I'm not denigrating them in any way, but speaking generally, guys, I tend to trust acts of charity a lot more when somebody doesn't call in a camera crew. And DD Me, every time he did something nice for somebody, always called in a camera crew.
Okay.
Yeah, I never thought of it like that. I know I actually had some time with him in Tampa after Dusty's funeral, and I really he just got married. I really like his wife.
Brenda, she's a great lady.
Yeah, very, very nice. So, we've kind of patched. We've certainly had words, but
well, no, to each their own. And I haven't talked to the guy in years, but let me tell you a story that'll reflect how he has no self-awareness. When he put out DDP Yoga in its infancy, 10, 12 years ago. I'm currently working for iHeartMedia. At the time, I was working for ESPN Radio. And he called me up and got my producer and said, hey, I want to come on Mark's show to talk about DDP Yoga. I'm an old friend of his. And my producer, comes into my studio and goes, hey, a guy named Diamond Dallas Page wants to come on the show to talk about some yoga thing he's doing. He says he's your old friend. And I go, old friend? He got me fired. Tell him to F off. And so a couple nights later, he was talking to another mutual acquaintance, Kevin Nash. And he was saying how I refused to have him on the show, and I wonder why. And Kevin Nash goes, Paige, you got him fired. And Paige goes, you think he's still mad about that?
Oh, my gosh. Wow.
God, well, it was a strange time, man. I wish I'd stayed fired.
Rick, I want to circle back to something you said a minute ago. You kind of alluded to the fact that you and Paige had a falling out. I didn't know that you guys ever were cross at all.
No, I wrote my book. I can't remember. Actually, Mark edited my book, and Mark's the one that made my book legible. I mean, or what's it say? Readable, legible, whatever.
I made it great, Rick. But
yeah. Thank you.
Well, put it this way. When you get flown into a WWE taping to meet with Ric Flair, Vince McMahon, and Triple H, and the first thing that gets said to you when you sit down is, by Vince, this book about your friend isn't good enough. Can you save it?
Yeah.
And I like to think I did.
You did?
We put in a lot more new material.
It's a great book.
Got stuff from guys like Steve Austin and Bill Goldberg. I conducted Rick? Probably in 2 or 3 WWE TV tapings, I probably conducted 8 or 9 interviews with people who weren't even in the book, but should have been quoted from the get-go. And if I do say so, it did turn out good. And the guy who started the process, Keith Greenberg, he put a lot of facts together, and the framework of the book was adequate. But he was writing it from the perspective that Ric Flair is just another wrestler.
Well, you was writing it like I was Freddie Blassie. Every the word was FFF.
Well, right, exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas
I'm not saying I don't use that word, but I usually don't use it all the time. You know what I mean?
Well, and when you're writing a book about Ric Flair, especially his autobiography, you got to approach from the standpoint that this is the greatest wrestler of all time. And he wrote it like he was a Bruno Sammartino fan, which I'm pretty sure he was. And that's no knock on Bruno, but this is Ric Flair's autobiography, for God's sake. It's got to be his statement of record, and he's the best. That's the statement.
Well, I mean, and what I said about Page was that he was the most overrated guy I'd ever seen in my life. And basically, kind of what Mark said is that he got the push from Eric, and nobody knows why or how.
Oh, I'm pretty sure I do, but go ahead.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, we'll segue out of that. But, Rick, tell me, do you still think that Page is the most overrated of all time? I'm a wrestling fan, and I don't think he's the most overrated. But I have a different perspective because I'm a fan, and you were in the business. Is he still the most overrated? And I assume you mean champion, the guy who carried the big belt.
Well, no. First of all, I don't bear anybody any ill will right now. But if you're asking me wrestling questions, and I had a great time in the other day. So I'm
no, not the person.
No, let me finish.
lot.
But I know sometimes that's not the real guy I'm seeing. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing about Page, Conrad. He did some really good stuff. His feud with Randy Savage was tremendous.
Awesome.
He got benefit of his relationship with Eric. And when the NWO was holding off the whole company with baseball bats, Page got to diamond cut 2 or 3 of them, which was a big breakthrough for him. Page was a competent upper mid-card wrestler, but favoritism and cronyisms would put him over the top. Is he the most overrated ever? Boy, I'd hate to say that.
No, that's definitely not the case.
It's such a the business has been around forever. But I never saw him as a very top guy.
Well, we didn't even mean to bring up DDP, but
hey, things happen when you flip the mics on and Mark Madden's here.
I'll